Have you ever asked yourself, what makes a good artist? What makes a bad one? Talent? Thankfully, it's not that simple, and I think the good news is that anybody can get good, but only if you do more of the things that will help you get good and less of the stuff that doesn't help. Wise words. What I mean is that it's not a binary thing like having, green eyes versus brown eyes, or having talent or not having talent. Think of it as a diet instead, where a lot of things that you eat and do will contribute to your health, while others will make you less healthy. Same thing with art. Improve your art diet. Most artists will never do so. This is how you get ahead. You've already found the best art channel on YouTube, so you're on the right track. So in this week's YouTube art school episode, we'll talk about the 10 most important things that separate good artists from bad artists. Uh-oh, quickly, class is starting. All right, class is in session. Pay attention. As artists, just like any other skill really, we all start off pretty ignorant, pretty bad. It's normal. It's what you do from there that matters. I've been fortunate to work at different studios on different teams, making connections with a slew of different artists over the last 16, 17, 18 years as a professional, mentoring hundreds of students in the last 8 years. And out of all of that, some patterns start to emerge and some things just become painfully obvious with time. Some artists just end up having wonderful careers or simply just get really good really fast, while the majority of others have miserable careers that end up flushing away their love of art. Or even if we take out the career part of it, just talking plainly about the art, most artists just never get really good despite their apparent efforts. Why? Being good is somewhat subjective, obviously, but imagine your favorite artist versus you from 5 years ago. What has to happen for that version of you to get to the level of your favorite artist? What are you missing? Here's what matters most based on my experience. The first thing on the list, the first checkbox a good artist should want to work towards checking is simply don't be boring. There's so much boring art around. Most art is boring. The older I get, the more this is true. Anybody who's got a lot of experience will likely have seen more things. When you keep seeing the same thing, the same designs, the same trends, over time it gets boring, not interesting. That's obvious. So if your audience is younger and they themselves don't have much experience, they'll be impressed with less. That can be good to realize. If you're a younger artist, also keep that in mind. More experienced artists will have probably seen most of the things that are new and cool to you. So you'll have to work extra hard to make something that's not boring to them. Do more research. Push your ideas further. Don't be boring. The second item on the checklist is to communicate emotions through the artworks. Bad artists will have too narrow a focus in our art. Maybe they'll be focusing on a bunch of technical skills, and that's not a bad thing, but they'll fail to create something memorable in the process. Memorable because it is emotional. It's so much harder to impress the average person with pure technical skills alone. You need to be at a very high level. A good artist will use technical skills, of course, but will also find every possible way to communicate emotions through the art. The way we store memories in our brain is largely influenced by emotional state. So the more emotional the piece is, the more memorable it has a chance to be, and the average person, without much technical knowledge, will likely think it's better as a result. It made them feel something, that's what art's all about. Typically, the most effective emotions to play with are sadness, anger, grief, most of what we consider to be negative emotions. Those typically have a bigger impact. Positive emotions work too, of course, but just not as well. My favorite quote-unquote negative emotion is nostalgia. When you're nostalgic, you reminisce about good times that you've now lost. It's past, it's gone. It's like grief, but milder. Let's say I draw a generic character. By simply adding some items to it, like a portable CD player, maybe a Tamagotchi, dyed blonde hair with spikes and baggy pants, basically the 90s kid starter pack, anybody who grew up in the 90s are way more likely to respond positively to the art. It'll make them feel nostalgic. Use emotions to give more impact to your art. And by the way, which emotion is the strongest in this case? The most memorable? Grief. Nothing beats it. I dare you to come up with one down in the comments. Next, Have a schedule and be disciplined about it. A good artist will have the same kind of discipline about their art practice as others might have about their workouts or even just their day job. That structure is important with art too. You want to dedicate time in your weekly schedule for art. Have it written down somewhere. When you do something regularly for long enough, it becomes something that you must do. It becomes a part of who you are. A not so good artist will treat art like they treat watching TV. Just whenever they feel like it. Making art will be treated more as something that they should do. There's a big psychological difference between something we should do and something we must do. You will move other engagements around the things that you must do, but not for things that you should do. And by the way, if you're looking for a structure in your art studies, a professionally crafted schedule maybe, check out my art program with the link in the video description. If you find any of my YouTube content helpful, it's just a tiny fraction of all the knowledge packed into this massive program that you can get for a massive discount until the end of the month only. As a reminder, the price is going up next month and it'll never be as cheap. I don't want you to miss out on the best deal ever. I also just added for all existing students an epic 23 pages week by week study guide to guide you through the entire program for maximum art gains. If you're an existing student, make sure that you go and download it. New updates are always free. All right, plug over. Now, the fourth item on the checklist is to understand basic social media psychology. It's simpler than it sounds. The good artist will understand that you have a split second on average to catch someone's attention when they're browsing Google, Instagram, Pinterest, or any other place where they go for art. Then if you do manage to do that, you have about 2 to 3 seconds on average where they'll be looking at the art before moving on to the next piece. That's not a lot of time. The bad artist will focus on the small details that don't really contribute much to the art instead of focusing on the big impact elements of the piece, what most people will spend most of their 3 seconds looking at. And that's why I always recommend to only worry about details in and around your piece's focal point, spending about 80% of your efforts there and 20% on the rest that will be seen mostly through peripheral vision. It's completely fine to have areas of a painting or a drawing that are sketchier, if it's unlikely anyone will look at it directly. The fifth factor will determine how fast or how slow an artist will improve. A good artist will always be observing things around them, constantly seeking and collecting information from what they see throughout the day, and the bad artist will see the same things but won't observe any of it, or will be very limited in their observations. If you're constantly observing things and trying to understand how and why they are a certain way, filling up your visual library in the process, this could mean improving twice as fast or maybe more compared to someone who doesn't. Get good at observing, aka seeing and analyzing what you see. And we're already halfway done, but the rest is just as important. So here's the sixth item on the checklist: be self-critical and seek critique. Unless you're already a master artist, which you aren't, there's a ton of stuff that we don't know, and a ton more we don't even know we don't know. Good artists will understand they're only ever looking at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to their art knowledge. The other part that's hidden and unknown is much larger. The good artist will be aware of that and seek critique from others to help reveal the rest of the iceberg and expand their knowledge. The bad artist will fall victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect and wrongfully think that they know more than they do. Not being aware of your own limits and shortcomings is like a curse. If you don't realize where you fall short, you can never make meaningful improvements. The next one on the list then, and this can apply to anything you do, but have a clear goal for your art. The bad artist in this case will be someone who can't answer this question. Why are you drawing? Or rather, has never considered the question. A good artist might not have that answer yet, but might be looking for that answer at least. Even better, a good artist will have found the answer and will be creating art to help towards that goal. If you have a goal, you can figure out a path to get there as soon as possible. For example, if you have the goal of becoming a character concept artist, you'd be working on character designs instead of potentially wasting time practicing environments maybe. Having a clear goal is a game changer for progress, however big or small the goal is. You need a destination before you set sails. Now, item number 8 on the checklist has to do with learning basic marketing and advertising concepts. This is one of those things that most artists do pretty poorly at, unfortunately. It's like personal finances for the general population. Most people aren't educated enough and make terrible financial decisions all their lives. A good artist here would have at least a decent understanding of how social media algorithms work and how the basic concept of supply and demand impacts the art community. A bad artist will wonder why their art isn't getting much attention and feel helpless in the face of poor results, while a good artist will understand that their art simply might not be in demand yet. There's a lot of supply online, so that's not really something you can control. So all you can work on really is the demand for your art. How do you increase demand for your art? Well, you do everything else that we've talked about today. You keep improving. If a restaurant only sells you bland rice with unseasoned steamed broccoli, you'll likely go to a different restaurant, right? Same with art. Make your menu more interesting. Learning marketing allows you to understand the why of things. Why do others behave how they do towards your art? Almost done now. In ninth on the checklist is to connect with others. The bad artist here will work in isolation, unknown to most and on a solo journey to improve. That's a hard path. The better artist will understand opportunities come from your connections to others and that it's never too early to get your art out there for the world to see. Not only that, but working on your art as part of a community is a massive boost of motivation. It introduces a bunch of different social pressures, ultimately resulting in you staying on course more often than not and maximizing your exposure to future opportunities. Forums, Facebook groups, Discord servers, whatever you choose, connect with others. Be a part of a small or big community of peers around your own level and help each other grow. The closely knit that little community becomes, the better the results long term. I think this has made a big impact on my own students, for example, in our private Discord server. And now finally, the last item on the list, turn envy into motivation. For this one, I don't know how to practice this. It might have a lot to do with your upbringing and what your support system is like, but good artists are more naturally inclined to look at great art, impressive art, and feel motivation as a result. Motivation to improve, knowing that such a high level is achievable with enough dedication and practice. Artists who get stuck on the envy part, who get discouraged looking at good art, they're gonna have a hard time. It's important to remember that the artist who's the source of envy also had to work very hard to clear the items on this list, plus a lot more, I'm sure, to get to the point where they're at. To be clear, nobody is a bad artist if they feel envy. It's how you manage to turn that into motivation that will make the difference. You're also not a bad artist if you're not doing everything from the list. The idea is to work on all of these to eventually check all 10 boxes. What would be a bad artist in this case will be aware of everything that I talked about today and still choose to not do anything about it. And that's fine too if you don't really care about art that much. But as soon as you start working on these, you'll be on the right track to becoming a good artist, as I'm sure most of you watching are. And that's gonna be it for today's class. Anything else you think I should add to the list? Write them in the comments. I'm sure a lot of you know by now, if you're a subscriber, I read all comments, so it won't go unnoticed. Also, want free brushes, bro? I'm still offering my brush set for free. Link in the top right corner of the screen and in the description. Many of which, by the way, that I used in today's study/painting in the background there. They're all some of my favorite brushes. Go get them. All right, see you next week.